Welcome. You're listening to This Leader, the podcast. If you lead people and are seeking the transformational, high-impact secrets that will lead to greater joy and fulfillment in your work, will optimize your team performance, and will help you create a happy, highly productive workplace, then you are this leader and you're in the right place. I'm your host, Claire Laughlin, and each week my guests and I will explore the mindsets, techniques, and actionable strategies that will help you build the career, team, and organization of your dreams. Because I believe no one should have to suffer in a dysfunctional workplace. Let's get started. Have you ever been deeply misunderstood or misinterpreted, even though you worked hard to get your words just right? Maybe you had a conversation where you said what you thought were all the right things, but the person across from you shut down or pulled back in a way you didn't expect. Later, you find out that they felt dismissed or unheard or like an inconvenience, and you're thinking, but wait, that's not what I meant at all. Here's the thing. Your words might be perfect, but if the other 93% of your communication is sending a different message, your good intentions won't matter. What if the gap isn't in what you're saying, but in all the ways you're communicating without even realizing it? I'm thrilled to welcome back Dr. Jared Fujishin for his second visit to the podcast. Jared wrote his PhD dissertation specifically on how nonverbal communication transforms relationships. And he's spent years teaching leaders how to bridge the trust gap, that space between our good intentions and actual connection. In our last conversation together, we explored the foundations of human connection. And today, we're going deeper into the practical, often invisible signals leaders send every single day. What makes Jared's work so powerful is how he helps leaders see the ways they're accidentally communicating disinterest or unavailability, even when their hearts are in the right place. And here's something I'm particularly passionate about. In our hyper-connected digital world, maybe the greatest gift we can give another person is our full, undivided presence. No phones, no keyboards separating us from the other. Just genuine, face-to-face human connection. We're going to talk quite a bit about that. And today we're going to explore several practical strategies that you can deploy immediately to minimize the trust gap with your team, to increase fidelity, and to be a better leader. So let's dive in. Here's my conversation with Dr. Jared Fujishin. Hey, Jared, how you doing today?
Claire, I'm doing so good. It's so good to see you. How are you doing?
It's good to see you too. I'm so glad to have you back on the podcast. There are so many things I want to talk to you about, but today I want to dive into something that we've been talking about as the trust gap. Specifically, I want to talk about nonverbal communication. All those aspects of communication that really send the message. We pay so much attention to words, and there's so much beyond words that I really think has to be addressed. And this is a specialty area for you. So can you just tell us a little bit about this? I know you did your dissertation on nonverbal communication. Can you just set us up here and tell me a little bit about your background from that perspective?
Yeah, I would love to. I was in the communication field. I loved studying all things communication and teaching. And so when I would go out to businesses and do workshops or do trainings, they would always say, okay, we want the most important communication thing. And I quickly found they thought it was all verbal. And I kind of did too when I first started. But I found that there are so many more things that go into communication beyond just talking. So one of them, and I know you've done this a lot too, but listening is a huge one. And the other one that's often forgotten is the nonverbal communication side. So this is just anything that we communicate without words or in addition to words that emphasizes what we're saying. So the example I often give is a lot of times people say, how do you communicate without words? Or how does nonverbal communication change what you're saying? And so the example I give is if I see you, Claire, and I say, Claire, it's so good to see you. I'm excited to see you. But you say, wait, Jared, you used words. What are you talking about? So let me say that exact same words, but change my nonverbal communication.
Okay.
Claire, so good to see you. Now, even and you can't see the face, rolling my eyes, my tone changes. And even though my words were exactly the same, my nonverbals change and it completely changes what you receive from me, right? Like the first one, you're excited. The second one, you're offended. And so that's the power of nonverbal communication.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And there's many dimensions and what you were just using and for this podcast which is audio, right? Audio only, we're really talking about tone, pace, pitch, volume, things like that. But there's also stuff like word choice, like which words you choose, right? Those kinds of things. Would that fall in your mind under nonverbal communication?
I think word choice is extremely important, but the nonverbal field is going to be how you say it and the things around it. So when we're talking about in conversation, there's of course what you say, but the way you say it, what you're doing with your body, and then all the external things that are adding to it. So where's our location? If we're in your office, what's in your office? Where am I sitting? Like it sounds so silly, but imagine I come to your office for a meeting and there's a chair that's facing a wall. Well, that artifact where it's faced will completely change our conversation, our communication, everything. So
Right.
when you look at nonverbal communication, you look at everything other than words and how that changes the meaning. So there are so many different avenues to look through, but I think why I'm so excited to share this with your specific audience is anyone who is in leadership, they oversee someone, someone reports to them, anything like that. A lot of times there's so much thought put into how do I word this email? How am I going to say this? What is my word choice? Which is important. But sometimes they forget about this other element. Well, it can do one of two things. It completely can either detract from what you're saying or it can overly emphasize in a positive way and really drive home from every angle what you're trying to communicate. So that is why I love nonverbal communication. When it was time to do my dissertation, as I was working on my PhD, I thought I just want to spend like a year or two diving into this and really figuring out how do we leverage this often overlooked form of communication in order to just enhance our leadership and our involvement in any type of relationship that we have.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to go there next, but I want to just get some of those other elements of nonverbal, even though, like I said, we're just audio here today, but we are talking about things like facial expression, spatial relationships, artifacts. Artifacts meaning, like you said, like the chair, the position of the chair, the things on the walls, the color of the room, even all kinds of things. I don't want to overwhelm people with so many dimensions. But it's also like timing, right? Like you were talking about this, and I work with leaders all the time about thinking, okay, what will we share with others? What are the right words? How do we do it? But thankfully, the organizations that I'm working with that are best at this are also considering timing. Who will receive the information first? When will they receive it? Via what channel will they receive it? How will that potentially play out? And while you can't predict everything, you can certainly try to position some of these elements for having a positive impact,
Exactly.
right? Okay, so let's talk about that. So tell me about how you kind of first, and I know this is so hardwired in us as human beings, but for your dissertation research, for example, how did you first notice the power of all those elements of nonverbal and their ability to build trust? I mean, or maybe when isn't the right thing, but sort of how or in what circumstances did you start to see like, oh, wow, this is far more powerful than a lot of people believe or know?
Yeah. I have two little ones right now, 1 and 4.
Yeah.
And when they were even younger, right before you learn how to talk, nonverbal communication is actually one of the first forms of communication all of us share. And so when you watch anyone that interacts with a baby, usually they get on their level and they start naturally raising their voice. They say, "Oh, you're so cute." And so it's something that's even built in us that understands we need to change our nonverbals. That's just a fancy, it's called proxemics or vocalics. Sorry, it's called vocalics. And we change it in order to adapt to our audience, which is a child. And so one of the first times I feel like is as I started having kids, noticing, oh, this is something that's really natural. And when you can do it well, it's going to enhance even interpersonal relationships with your kids.
Right.
And then I thought, well, I want to see if this applies across cultures and to adults, across ages, all the different things. And so that's kind of what sparked some of the interest of saying, well, if we naturally change our voice in order to connect with someone like a child or a smaller person, what are we doing that we naturally should be doing in the workplace or with people that we connect with? Or how do we talk when we're talking with authority or people, all across the board? So that's kind of what sparked it. And I started just going down that trail to find what is it and how do we leverage it in order to really connect and encourage and lead the best way that we can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, tell us, like, what did you discover in your research?
So there are two big things that I think are really applicable no matter where people are in the workforce.
Okay.
One of them is going to sound so simple, but it is one of the biggest things you can do, and it's just to smile. And it has to be authentic, right? Like you don't want to be cheesy or weird or plastic about it, but having a gentle smile or what we kind of call happy eyes, where you can tell, like, oh, they're engaged, they're excited, rather than an expressionless face, is going to automatically change the tone of any conversation you have. So finding ways to incorporate that and to laugh a little bit. Here's an interesting thing about laughter, just that sound.
Yeah.
Few people, the majority of the time that you laugh, it's not because you think it's funny. It's actually a form of connection. You're trying to say, like, hey, this is a playful, light tone. And so it's not that they're a stand up comedian across the table from you. It's that you're saying, oh, I want to connect with you. Yes, this is a lighthearted conversation that we're having. So little things like that, laughter and smiling.
Yeah. It's a signal to the other person about the context, in a sense, of the conversation. Does that make sense?
Exactly. 100%. And so all those little things, when you add them together, are going to lead to positive conversations because it sets the tone. It tells them, hey, here's what I'm hoping for the feeling in this conversation. So intentionality with that is going to be huge.
Okay, so a couple things here. Intentionality, I think, is really important, but you also mentioned genuine or authentic, maybe was the word you used. But this idea of, I know there's a place where people need to work on their nonverbal communication. I have actually seen leaders, they're very well intended leaders. Okay. They want to do the right things. They care about their people, and all that is true. And yet, the way they show up in to the meeting, or, they have maybe a harder to read expression, or they have a furrowed brow, or they tend to use facial expressions that feel closed for others, right? So unintentionally, they could even be creating sort of a trust gap. They could be creating a situation where people are less likely to lean in and have an authentic conversation, right? So in those cases, I would say, okay, you need to work on being more aware of your nonverbal. Let's play with it. How would you guide someone through that, Jared? How do you help people work on their nonverbal communication, especially things like facial expression, body posture, et cetera, without becoming self-conscious and while retaining authenticity?
Yes. Okay. So there's kind of three steps that I think of. The first, before we even get to how to do the nonverbal or what to change, is to check in with yourself. Like, are you happy at work? Is this a place that's bringing you joy? And I think that is such an important piece of the conversation if you want to be authentic, to make sure that, yeah, I do enjoy this. And if not, that's totally fine. Let's figure out where your passions are. What can you do? Or not that we're going to be happy all the time, but if you're doing something that has a purpose and you see this is the way I'm contributing to this organization, to society, this is my value or my purpose in doing this, you can derive a lot of the nonverbal stuff down the road as long as you know that core piece. So that's the first piece, saying like, hey, are you in a spot where you're enjoying what you're doing or it feels like it's of value or purposeful?
So help it come from the inside out is kind of what you're saying. First, look
Yeah.
inside. Okay.
Because otherwise, if we try to go backwards and it's like, what's the quick hack? What nonverbal thing do I do? People often look for that, and I totally get it. Like, I love shortcuts. If I'm driving, I want the fastest route.
Right.
But the problem is, if you just look for these little hacks and you're not actually communicating what's inside of you, there's a quote from the overflow of the mouth, the heart speaks. And it's just at the end, eventually, your words are going to catch up with what you actually believe. And it's the same with nonverbal. So instead of saying, like, hey, what's this hack to make people like me? Figuring out, okay, first of all, am I where I'm supposed to be? And then how do I align my speech and my nonverbals with that purpose, with that mission? So that's why I would say it's the first thing. So once you get that down, and that's a journey, that may take a week for some people, it may take an hour, it may take a year, who knows? But understanding that is a core piece that we're going to draw back from. So that's step one.
Okay.
Step two then is once you know, like, okay, I see the reason that I'm here, I see the purpose for why I'm here, we can start doing these little things. And that's kind of the more specific, what we're going to look at today. So I'm assuming your audience really does love the people that they're around, that they have a heart for others. They're not just being like, how do I manipulate people, right? Like, no one's saying that, hopefully. So for this podcast, let's assume step one is taken care of. Number one, they know why they're there. They have that vision. Then the next thing we're going to do is start relying back on that when we don't feel like it. So think about a manager going into a meeting. It's Thursday afternoon. There are emails piling up. There are so many fires to put out. And then you have this 1 hour meeting. It would make total sense to come in with an expressionless face because you're tired, to be not short, but very direct and say, okay, here are the 3 things we're doing today. You do this, you do that. Okay, number 3, we're doing this, go. And it's a missed opportunity when you could say, okay, let me remember, I have a purpose here. I really do love these people. I want what's best for them, which means every meeting I have, I want to see, is there anything I can do to just give them a boost, to give them a little shot in the arm to say, like, hey, let's rally, let's do this. And if that's your mindset, then it becomes very easy to say, okay, smiling, that's a great nonverbal thing. I don't always feel like it, but if there's an element that I can bring to the table, and it may take 5 minutes before the meeting saying, what am I grateful for today? A lot's gone wrong, a lot's hard, but is there any silver lining? And then really highlighting it and being honest, being real, like not being fake of everything's great and, the company's burning, going down in flames. So being honest, but saying, hey, there's always something positive, and I'm going to draw that out. And then as you're verbalizing that, have your nonverbals match. So when you're really happy, you tend to smile. And when you smile, even the tone of your voice changes. And Claire, here's a cool thing. Even being all audio,
Yeah.
our audience can probably tell when we're talking with a smile. Like right now, if they had to guess, is Jared smiling? They could guess. And then if I were to talk like this and change my nonverbal facial expression, the audience can probably tell I'm not smiling right now. Because there's something with our body. When we start smiling, it's easier to laugh. And when it's easier to laugh, our tone goes up, our pitch goes up.
Yes.
And all these little things that once you verbalize, you're like, oh yeah, that is right. I do notice that. So I would say that's the second piece of it. How are we doing so far? I don't want to go into lecture mode here.
No, I love it. It's so powerful, Jared. And I'm just totally struck by why and how everything you're saying is reinforcing this deep belief that I have, which is it's powerful and meaningful to cultivate joy in your life. I don't think everybody believes that, but I sure do.
I do too.
And I think it's the source. It's the source. It's gratitude, it's joy, it's meaning, it's purpose. And when we pay attention and we cultivate that, relationships become easier, our ability to connect with others, to listen, to have empathy, to all the things. Everything sort of starts to flow from this place of really understanding, really being connected to our joy. And get your mind right is what I always say. Get your mind right. Like, think about the thought processes that you're showing up with. What are the thoughts that are habitual for you? And then how do those thoughts impact the way you show up in so many different areas? And I think our listeners are like, yes, please, more of this. It feels very resonant based on all the things we talk about on this podcast. So
yeah,
cultivate that purpose, meaning, and joy. Step one, really cultivate it. And then when you need to step into a moment, connect back to that meaning and purpose. Like if you don't feel like it at the moment, like you've had a hard day, it's the last meeting of the day, it's been a big week, whatever that is, and you know that you're about to go in, be intentional and connect back. That's step one and step two, if I've got that right.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then before we go to step three, just to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, everyone may not believe that joy is important, but I would always say, well, think about in your life, who are you most drawn to? Is it the type of people who are always grouchy, always saying what you're doing wrong, always nitpicking? Like, are you just naturally like, I'm going to call them up? They always make me feel terrible after the call. Like, no, we are naturally drawn to people who make us laugh, who make us feel safe, who make us feel seen. And so if we know that about ourselves, that we're naturally drawn to those types of people,
Yeah.
that's a really good indicator. That's what we should be radiating to the people around us.
Right.
So I would just say that because I agree. I think joy, gratitude, all of those things are so, so important.
Yeah.
You got the first two steps. The third is what we're doing right now is once you're on board and saying, okay, I want to create those moments that matter in every single interaction I have with people. Like ideally, I know that's not always realistic, but ideally, that's my hope that people leave interactions with me feeling fired up, feeling encouraged, feeling seen, feeling like they belong on this team in this company. Then the third thing is what we're doing right now. And it's saying, okay, now that I know that it's authentic and this is really what I want, what are those practical ways that I do that? And so our podcast is step three. We're kind of fast forwarding through one and two. Once people are on board with that, now we say, okay, so what are the areas that I need to improve and work on? And I think that's what we can kind of dive into today, look at, and leave our listeners with something that they'll be different by dinner today. They'll say, I can implement that in my last meeting, or I can implement that even with like my husband or wife or my mom and whoever's in the house. Here's what we can do. So I can throw a few of those out and then we can just explore.
Let's do it.
All right. So we talked about the first one and it's smiling. Now, here's the deal with all facial nonverbals. Here's why it's so hard for people. When you talk and go throughout your day, you're very aware of your words. A lot of people can even be aware of their attire, which is a nonverbal form. They're aware of time, even. Did I show up to the meeting on time? All those things because they can experience it at the same time as the listener audience. If you're not on a Zoom call, you do not experience your face. And so it can be one of the last things you think about. But ironically, it's one of the first things you notice about the person across the table. Do they
Sure.
have a furrowed brow? Are they making eye contact? Are they smiling? And so it's so funny because we are so quick to notice it in others. But because unless we're in front of a mirror or someone shows us a selfie, we really don't see it in ourselves, which can make it be so easy to forget. Oh, yeah, it's important that I have a smile on, or it's important that I nod when they're speaking so they know I'm tracking with them. And again, you can absolutely misuse these or abuse these and try to fake it, but people see through that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so why I wanted to really bring up steps one and two of authenticity, that you really do care and you really do want them to be heard. And if that's the framework, then it makes it authentic and real when you say, oh, okay, to help people feel heard, I need to nod. And that isn't, in my mind, that isn't something that you're faking. It's saying, what's the skill set to show my true heart, which is I want them to know they can open up to me.
Yes.
And so smiling, your eyes, where your eyes are looking or what they're doing, like the whole happy eye thing, and making sure that your eyes are sparkly, they're alive. All of those things are going to make people feel like they can open up to you. And I'll say that with the caveat, and then I want to hear your thoughts too, that you also need to read the room, right? Like there's not always a go-to, I have to smile every minute. And someone's like, my cat passed away. And you're like, wow, that you totally misread the situation.
Right.
You can still have nonverbals. Like sometimes when you slow down a little bit and your eyes, sometimes you just do like the lightest squint when someone's hurting, say, yes, like I feel that. Tell me about that. So you're still being intentional with your nonverbals, but I would say 70-80% of the time, a smile is the tone that you want to go for when you're trying to encourage and cultivate and inspire a workforce.
I love that. I think a smile makes you approachable, I believe. I have been accused of smiling too much and laughing too much. And I use the word accused lightly, but one of the teams I work with, said to me one time, we were on a Zoom call, and basically one of the leaders interrupted the meeting and said, "Claire, do you ever stop smiling?" This kind of thing. And now when I think about it through this lens, I realize I was so full of joy to be part of that team. And everything about it resonates with me at such a core level that I do. I show up that way. And I just said, well, I don't know. Probably not. Like, probably not when we're together. I'm probably not going to stop smiling.
What a great answer.
And I'm good with that. Right. But there's also been places where I've been, called in to do some coaching or consulting with somebody. It's usually someone young in their career. And there's an interpretation of their laughter or their giggles or their smiles that people are interpreting as less professional, not mature enough for the organization. Have you ever run across that? I mean, I know it when I see it. It feels like nervous laughter, for example, or something like that. But have you run across that?
Absolutely. I think I'll start with the younger piece, saying, like, oh, they're not as mature in the field. I think that would go back to the first step of saying, is this the right organization for you? If you are someone who's naturally excited and you're happy, but you're surrounded by a team who they say, no, we don't want joy here. This is not a job for joy.
We're not sure that your joyfulness really fits with us. Yeah.
Then say, okay, like, should I change my whole approach? Or is this maybe not a good fit? And it's not a judgment on anyone, but saying, hey, you need to be authentic. And then there are some jobs where absolutely you should probably be more serious or more somber. I have some family members who are in law enforcement, and there are times where you should be like very joyful, and we might even need more of that. But then there are times when you also have to be kind of serious in that job. So I do think it is specific to the role you have. And it really goes back to saying, but what's the core? And the core, if you listen to our last episode together, we talked about connection. How do you connect with others? And there are times where people will need different things from us. And that's great. I would be sensitive. I would be aware of that. Like for me, there's one person that I interacted with, and it was kind of similar to you. They're like, wow, you're just a little much in the morning. And I said, okay, no worries. I like take that note. I will interact differently and I'm still going to be joyful and happy, but maybe I won't be as loud or I won't talk as fast. I'm going to give you like a little nod. And even that, I got the person to laugh and I was like, okay, we've already connected then.
Right.
And so, not saying that we don't just not change, like we should adapt, but the core of who we are should stay the same.
Yeah.
So, I think there are probably jobs, and you may even have audience members who have jobs where just say, like, it's not appropriate for this role. And I say 100%, but you should still figure out what the nonverbals that are appropriate and fill those in. So for the majority of people, it probably will be smiling and just bringing a little joy.
Right.
If it's not, then figure out what are the other areas. And we can also look at that next, because the next one would probably be timing, chronemics. And that is huge as well. How quickly do you respond? And is there anything else you want to say about the smile and nonverbal thing before we jump to another one?
I think one of the contexts I'm thinking about here is the few core things that a leader might start becoming more aware of when it comes to their nonverbals. And so we've talked about the smile being really important and that kind of ease and creating an approachability and a connectedness with others through the smile and the facial expression. So let me just sort of put that as number one. And now we're going to look at number two, which you're thinking time, the use of time.
I think time is a big one. So we live in an age where there's so much AI, there's so much quick pace stuff that people, whether it's good or bad, have become accustomed to immediate responses.
Right.
So if you email a giant company or organization, you'll get a bot or someone will reply back within minutes, maybe even seconds. And that happens so often that when you go into an everyday type organization where there are real humans reading messages and replying, it may be a few hours. It might even be a day. And because we live in such a fast-paced society, that can really detract from business. Like, oh, well, I've already contacted 4 other people and I already got this problem solved. And you're like, oh, wait, I was going to reply. So little things like how slow or fast you reply is communicating something. And so one just super practical thing, let's say you have, I don't know, 30 emails right when you walk in the door.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to prioritize them and say, okay, these 10, wow, these are super important. These are big fires I need to put out. These two, they could wait. This one, fine till tomorrow. And they organize it. People put it in, different, they'll flag it or color it, whatever it is. And then they'll get back to people in order of priority. Whereas a little thing, I was talking to a guy, he's the global VP of a very, very big organization in Silicon Valley. And we were chatting about this. And I say, what do you do? Because he's dealing with hundreds of emails a day. Like, it stressed me out to see, we were at lunch. His notifications were just, I was like, man, that must stress you out. But he
Yeah.
gave me a great tip. He said, one thing that I do, even if it's not a huge level 10 thing for me, I know for that person to write me, it's probably one of the top priorities in their head. And I want them to know that what matters to them matters to me. So I will reply back and I'll say, I'm going to read this. I will get back to you and then he gives them a time frame. So if it's somewhat important, he'll say like within 2 hours, let me really look into this. If it's something that's not as high of a priority, he'll still reply right away and say, hey, let me circle back to this. I'll be there first thing in the morning with an answer in your inbox. And
Yes.
what he's found and what I just so much agree with is even though he didn't solve the problem, he didn't really change anything, but in a quick amount of time, he said, I see this is important. It's on my radar. It's received. And then, of course, he follows up, which really at the long term really adds to the trust.
Right.
But little things like that, if you can close that time gap, is going to communicate value and respect to people that are writing to you.
I totally hear that. I think what's coming up for me is that I do hear from a lot of people that the time pressure that they feel in having to get back to someone really quickly is pretty overwhelming. Like, oh, people expect an answer immediately and this and that. But I think what I hear you saying, Jared, is think through the communication from the eyes of the person you're communicating with.
Exactly.
And I kind of go to this example that I always think about when I think about the use of time, which is how when you go to a doctor's appointment, it's no problem for you to sit in the waiting room for however long. It can be an hour, it can be 15 minutes, it can be however long it takes. But if you show up 5 minutes late for your intended appointment, you got to make another appointment. Doctor is not waiting for you, but you got to wait for the doctor, right? So I think there's something to that, to think about how time and the use of time communicates a sense of power. And it sounds like your friend, who is very conscientious of that and trying to reach out quite immediately, is very intentional about not abusing a sense of power, even though he has a really big position. Like, he wants to level the playing field by how he's using his time, which I think that's kind of what I want to double down on in terms of leadership, is to think through how can you utilize the nonverbal element of time to enhance your leadership, to enhance your connectedness with others, to level the playing field if you are in a position of power. And really as a gift, so to speak, of, helping everyone do their work more effectively and efficiently, something like that.
Exactly. And when you think through the practicality of this, if you're a manager, if you own a business, if you're an executive, if you have team members who feel like they are valued and seen by you and you respect them,
Right.
even though there is a power dynamic difference, if there's respect, my goodness, that is going to lead to so much trust. It's going to make you go further, faster in your mission and what you're doing. And you're going to have team members who aren't always fighting you. They're not always trying to take you down a peg. So like, oh, they come down to my level. Like, I love my direct report. I'm going to go the extra mile for this person. And I think that type of culture, just on a really practical level, is going to lead to so much joy in the workplace. And going back to joy, you'll naturally have it if you're surrounded by people that you genuinely enjoy and trust.
Absolutely. Let's do one more. We talked about facial expression. And of course, we could go on and on, but we talked about the facial expression, the smile, the eyes. We talked about the use of time. If there's one more element that leaders should be paying attention to, you think that really delivers kind of a powerful message and improves leadership, what do you think that last one would be?
I would say artifacts. Artifacts are often overlooked, but I think one, they're just super fun to talk about. And two, if you get this right, people won't even know why they like you so much, but they're going to like you. So here are some examples of artifacts. We have a ton of digital artifacts right now. Like right now, I have my phone and it's right in front of me. We always have tech. I have my laptop, I have my phone, I have an Apple Watch, like all these things that I can turn to that are physical objects. So there was a really interesting study called the mere presence effect. And it was this double blind study. So people that were participating didn't know what was being studied. And even the reoccurring person in the leadership role didn't know what the researchers were looking at. What they did is they said, I want you to have a meeting. And just when the meeting starts, put your phone on the desk. And then they gave them some random talking points that had nothing, they weren't looking at that at all.
Right.
At the end of the study, they took the people that were meeting with the leader and gave them a survey and said, how connected did you feel? How much did you like this meeting? How much do you like the person? And just all these different questions. Then they still didn't tell people what they're studying. They brought in a new group and said, okay, what I want you to do is have your phone on the table. When the person walks in, flip it face down and then do the same talking points. And what they found is that small act, both times the leader did not look at his phone or her phone. They had multiple people that ran this. They just had it up or faced it down. It was drastic how much more people said they felt like they belong, like they were seen, like they enjoyed the meeting purely by that artifact move of saying, I'm putting this face down. And what it did is it communicated right at the start, you are my priority. You're what's important here.
Right.
And so for any of our leaders, just taking this one small thing that if someone walks in your office, close your laptop or like fully face them, move away from the artifact, flip the phone upside down. And even if it's a short conversation, we all have people that they sit down like, oh, this is an hour meeting. No, I have like 3 minutes to my next one. It doesn't have to be a long sit down, but still for those 3 minutes and say, hey, I have 3 minutes. It's completely yours. 100% I'm here. What do you need? And then flip your phone down or move your computer.
Yes.
That one move, according to this study, and from what I've seen too, is going to completely change that conversation. And if you do this over time, over and over and over again, the aggregate of that, when you add up all those little micro small ways of saying you're important, people again aren't even going to know why they love you so much as a leader, but they will because you're continuously moving artifacts, something people rarely think about to say you're important.
I think that's so powerful. I know that to be true from so many interactions where I've heard people sort of complain and tell me, and they're suffering a little bit. I go into my manager's office and my manager doesn't look up from their computer. They say the words, "What can I help you with?" But they keep looking at their screen. And in many cases, they continue to type. And I think in our digital world where so many people are on meetings on Teams or on Zoom or on this or that, I know for me it's very hard when I'm trying to teach a group on Zoom, for example. And I can tell that half of the people are checking their email and doing work on their computer. It's their prerogative. That's okay. But on the other hand, I think this is really detracting from the connection, from the learning, from the sense of community that we could be sharing right now. It's also true. And I'm a big fan. I mean, people will complain sometimes, I can never get a hold of you, Claire. It's because my phone is maybe the least important thing in my life? And though it is a tool, I want to remember that it's a tool. It's not a replacement for where I am, what I'm doing, what I'm seeing, anything like that.
Exactly. And so getting this right, making sure our artifacts are never more important than people, and then non-verbally following through with that is going to add weight to our words. Like the manager you mentioned or the leader you mentioned that said, how can I help you? But doesn't look up. So we have eye contact, continues to type and look at an artifact rather than a person. Does that person feel hurt? No. Are they going to come back when they have a problem? Probably not. They feel like an inconvenience. And so again, like let's give the benefit of the doubt and say that leader genuinely means it, but is really busy.
Right.
This is a great opportunity to say, okay, this is a very practical way. You have to stop typing. I know one lady, she self-identified. She's like, I have ADHD. I'm doing a million things at once. Like, tell me, I can hear, but I'm also writing this. And that goes back to put yourself in the other person's shoes. It may be hard to walk into a boss or a supervisor's office. And even if you really do hear them, this is the importance of nonverbal communication. You have to align your actions to your heart and say, I am going to pause this. And it's not because you're an inconvenience, it's because I'm actually here for you. Everything else is to support you. And
Right.
so those nonverbal actions help remind us. One more thing, and then love to hear your thoughts on this as well. But even how your office is set up can say a ton. So, do you have a seat for people? Is there a huge desk between you and them? Or is it like you have a nice coffee shop feel and you go sit next to them? All of those little things, again, add up. And so, making sure that it's not like you have the most comfy chair and they have like this, $10 metal thing to sit on. All of those little things to say, even with my artifacts, I want to show that I've put thought into this,
Yeah.
that it's a welcoming place. Some people have like candy. That's awesome. Like whatever it is, just to say, hey, you're welcome here. I want to be hospitable.
Yes.
Have you seen a lot of that as you tour, as you work with office setup too?
So much. I mean, we could go on and on. The pictures on the walls, the seating arrangements, the sense of privacy. Sometimes, do you have a place where people can have a private conversation? I used to do a lot of work in healthcare, and that comes out as very, very important. You have to have places where people can feel like they can have a confidential conversation.
Yes.
But I think for our listeners to really kind of let's just boil it down to kind of 3 tips based on these 3 areas that they can start paying attention to right away. So, whether you feel comfortable with the way you're showing up nonverbally or not, bringing a little bit more awareness to these kinds of issues, your facial expression, your smile, what your eyes are communicating to someone else, your use of time, and how you're inviting people in or being responsive. That responsiveness is so important. And then again, those artifacts. And I think very importantly, if we could just encourage people to put those phones away and shut their laptops when they're talking to somebody, that would be a huge bonus. I can't tell you how often, even in my own household, I get sort of someone flipping through the phone while I'm trying to talk to them. And I try not to be too intense about it, but that's not a good idea. Let's not practice that.
Oh, I am with you. And I'm guilty of it too. It is so hard. You know what I did?
But you notice it. You notice it when you're doing it. Am I right?
Yes. And so we took drastic measures because I love tech. I love to be entertained. Like I can always open my phone. But now that I have a 4-year-old who's a little more aware, I said, no, like there's no way that he's going to grow up with me looking at a screen. I want him to have memories of me looking at him. So what we did is I took him to the lumber yard, and I'm not like a super handy person, but I was like, I'm going to figure out how to do this with you. So we got a big old 2x6. I
Yeah,
taught him how to sand it down. We stained it, we painted it, we screwed it together, and him and I made a box together. And now when I come home from work, the first thing I do is I open the box and I put my phone in.
that's great.
And I just want him to have that memory that, like, yeah, it is an addiction playing with that phone. That thing is always entertaining. There's always something funny. And so I'm going to show you, like, you are so much more important than this.
Yeah.
And taking kind of like, instead of flipping my phone down, he now goes and he says, Dada, are you going to take your watch off too? And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. And so I put everything in the box because I know I will naturally gravitate towards, oh, I could just check this email.
Right. It's very distracting.
And so for our leaders, for our listeners, if this is a problem or it's something where you're like, man, it's really hard to do that, get drastic, do something wild, because not only will it help you, it will automatically build in accountability if you have like this over the top box thing. And then it makes it fun. Like now it's a joke in our house where if I'm on my phone, sweet Aurora or, my boys, Asher will be like, let's put that in the box. And it becomes accountable and fun and just like a silly way to remind me, oh yeah, even in my house, I need to make sure that I'm putting people before artifacts.
Absolutely. I love that. These are great tips, Jared. Thank you so much. This is good stuff. It is so foundational for us to be able to create these human connection moments. It's where all good leadership stems from. So I really appreciate you being here today. And I love that you're on the podcast for a second time. I know this is only the beginning. You'll be on again soon because we have a whole other topic that we're going to talk about. But in the meantime, where can people find you?
Fujifirm.com is where I host most of my stuff. And yeah, I would love to connect with anyone and help any way I can.
Okay. So Fuji, Fujifirm, Fujifirm.com. Perfect, Jared. Thanks again. Always appreciate you. Keep smiling and keep making those great connections.
Thanks, Claire. Have a good one.
See you soon. So if you remember back to that scenario I described at the beginning, when you sense, a disconnect between your good intentions and how another person actually experiences your communication, well, here's what Jared taught us. First, connect to your purpose and joy before you try to fix your techniques, right? Authenticity, something we all strive for, it comes from the inside out, not from tricks or hacks like memorizing gestures or scripting even the perfect words. Second, be intentional about bringing your smile and what Jared calls happy eyes into interactions, because your facial expressions either invite people in or they keep them at arm's length, often without you even realizing it. Third, use time as a gift. It's such a powerful aspect of nonverbal communication. Be responsive and acknowledge others quickly. Those small shifts tell the other person you matter, and they can transform someone's entire day. And here's the big one that I really want to emphasize. Put your phone away. Close your laptop. Be fully present. Those artifacts, like our devices, our screens, the digital distractions we carry, they are silently screaming to the people around us that they're less important than whatever notification or reel just popped up. Whether you're leading a team meeting, sitting down with a direct report, or talking with your own family, the simple act of eliminating those barriers says, you are my priority right now. So being present, like truly present with another human being, might be the greatest gift we can give in this distracted world we live in. I'm really grateful to Jared for returning to the podcast and breaking down something most of us don't think about, but we experience all day, every single day. As he continues his work helping leaders and organizations build genuine connection, his wisdom about the invisible parts of communication is something I'm definitely carrying forward. You can learn more about Jared and his work at Fujifirm.com. It'll be in the show notes. And listen, if this conversation sparks something for you, I'd love to hear about it. Send me a message on Instagram or LinkedIn and tell me how you're putting this content to work. I'm at Claire Laughlin Consulting, and I would love to hear from you. Until next time, go lead the way and make those connections count. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about my services and for lots of free resources and additional tools to enrich your journey, visit my website and subscribe to my newsletter at clairelaughlin.com. If you have a question about leadership, teams, or organizational culture you'd like me to address on the podcast, please reach out to me at support@clairelaughlin.com and connect with me on social channels at Claire Laughlin Consulting. Until next time, lead the way.